When you picture a person from the Ice Age, you probably imagine a hunter, someone focused only on survival, fighting off giant beasts. But the real story is so much deeper and more surprising. The evidence we have today shows that these ancient people had complex relationships with animals, relationships that look a lot like the love we have for our pets today. Let's start our countdown with an animal you might not have expected at all. Number 5. Mice. Now, nobody was keeping mice in little cages or giving them cute names, at least not that we know of. This was not a wanted relationship, but it was a very important one. In the Middle East, in a place called the Jordan Valley, archaeologists were digging in sites that belonged to a group of people called the Natufians, who lived around 14,500 years ago. These people were doing something new. They were starting to live in the same place for long periods, building some of the first small villages. As they started to gather and store wild grains, they accidentally created the perfect home for another creature, the house mouse. In the layers of dirt from this time, scientists found a huge increase in the bones of house mice. Wild mice do not live in big groups like this. They only form large colonies when there is a steady, reliable source of food, like a human grain store. So these mice moved in with people, not as invited guests, but as roommates who took advantage of the new lifestyle humans were creating. They followed the food. This is what scientists call a commensal pathway, where one species benefits from another without causing it much harm. While no Natufian ever buried a mouse with special honors, this new close relationship was a huge deal. It marks the exact moment humans started changing their environment, so much that other animals changed their behavior to live alongside us. And this huge population of mice, living in and around human homes, set the stage for our next animal, the one that would be invited in to deal with the uninvited mouse problem. Number 4. Ravens and other birds. Our journey now takes us to Central Europe, to sites in the Czech Republic that are around 30,000 years old. These places belong to people from the Pavlovian and Gravettian cultures. While digging, archaeologists noticed something strange. They were finding a lot of raven bones, way more than you would expect from random chance. And even stranger, these bones did not have many cut marks on them. If the people were just hunting ravens for a quick meal, the bones would be covered in marks from butchering. But they were not. This made scientists curious, so they used a technique called stable isotope analysis. This is like a chemical fingerprint inside the bones that tells you what an animal was eating. The analysis showed that these ancient ravens had changed their diet. Instead of eating what wild ravens normally ate, they were eating a lot of reindeer, the same animal that the humans were hunting. This means the ravens were not just finding leftovers by accident, they were hanging around the human camps, being fed or consistently finding scraps from the human hunters. They had become camp followers. Some of the raven bones were even carved and shaped into ornaments, showing that these birds were not just pests or food. They had a special, symbolic meaning to these Ice Age people. Ravens are incredibly smart birds. They are playful, they can solve problems, and they can even mimic sounds, including human speech. We see similar relationships in more recent times. Inuit people in the Arctic have been known to have friendly relationships with ravens around their camps. The birds act as lookouts, making noise when a polar bear or a stranger approaches. In the myths of native peoples in the Pacific Northwest, the raven is a central figure, a creator and a trickster. The evidence from 30,000 years ago suggests this special connection between humans and ravens is incredibly old. While we have not found a raven carefully buried like a pet, the clues point to a unique relationship, part practical, part spiritual, and part companionship. These feathered friends were a real part of Ice Age life. Number 3. Cats. Most people think the story of cats and humans begins in ancient Egypt, with pharaohs and pyramids. We have all seen the paintings of elegant cats being worshipped as gods, but the real story starts much, much earlier and on an island. On the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea, archaeologists found a grave that was 9,500 years old. Inside was a human skeleton, and buried right next to it in its own small grave was the complete skeleton of a cat. This is a game changer for 2 big reasons. First, Cyprus has no native wildcats. The only way that cat could have gotten to the island was on a boat with a person. This was not a wild animal that just happened to die in the same spot. It was deliberately brought across the sea. Second, the cat was buried with the same kind of care as the human. It had its own grave goods, like polished stones and seashells. This shows that the cat was not just cargo. It had a special, symbolic importance to the person it was buried with. It was a companion. So why would early farmers take a cat on a boat? Remember our number 5 pet, the mouse? The people on Cyprus were early farmers. They were growing and storing grain, which attracted mice. Cats are natural hunters of rodents. They likely started hanging around early human settlements on the mainland, drawn in by the mice. Humans quickly realized that these felines were useful. A cat could protect a village's precious food supply from pests. It was a relationship of mutual benefit. The cats got an easy source of food, the mice and humans got a pest controller. This relationship, which started as a practical arrangement, slowly blossomed into the affectionate bond we know today. By the time the Egyptians were painting cats on temple walls, the friendship between humans and felines was already thousands of years old, born on the open sea and in the first farming villages. Number 2, dogs. The story of humans and dogs is the oldest story of animal friendship in the world, and the evidence shows it began much earlier and in more amazing ways than we ever imagined. For a long time, scientists have debated where and when wolves first became dogs. One of the oldest skulls that looks more like a dog than a wolf was found in Goyet Cave in Belgium, and it is about 31,000 years old. But the evidence is tricky, and some scientists still argue about it. However, the first completely clear, undeniable evidence of a pet dog comes from a place called Bonn Oberkassel in Germany. Here, in a grave dated to 14,200 years ago, 2 humans were buried, and with them, they buried a young dog. But this was not just any dog. By studying its teeth, scientists discovered that as a puppy, the dog had suffered from a very serious disease called distemper. This disease is often fatal, and the puppy would have been very sick for weeks, maybe even months. It would have needed intensive, round-the-clock care to survive. It needed to be kept warm, given water, and fed soft food by hand. The fact that it lived through this illness is proof of the compassionate care it received from its human family. They did not see it as a simple tool. They nursed it back to health, and when it finally died, they buried it with them. This combination of medical care and symbolic burial is the strongest evidence you can find for a true pet relationship in the ancient world. But the story does not stop in Europe. If we travel thousands of miles northeast to Zhokhov Island, high in the Siberian Arctic, we find another incredible piece of the puzzle. Here, scientists found the remains of dogs from 9,500 years ago. They were able to extract ancient DNA from the bones. This DNA told them that these were not just any dogs. Their genes were already specialized for pulling sleds. They had adaptations for high-endurance running in the cold and for a diet rich in fat, just like modern sled dogs like Siberian Huskies. This means that 9,500 years ago, people were not just living with dogs, they were actively breeding them for specific jobs. They were using directional selection, choosing the dogs that were the best sled pullers, and breeding them together to create a line of working animals. This is a very sophisticated level of domestication, happening thousands of years before the farming animals like sheep and cows were common in Europe. And the story gets even more amazing when we cross over into the Americas. At a site in Alaska called Swan Point, researchers recently found a piece of a dog's leg bone that is 12,000 years old. Using that same isotope analysis we talked about with the ravens, they studied the bone to see what the dog ate. The area was full of caribou, so you would expect the dog to have eaten caribou. But its chemical signature did not match caribou, it matched salmon. This means that the humans at the site were catching valuable, high-protein salmon and feeding it to their dogs. They were sharing their best food with their canine companions. This shows a deep bond between people and dogs in North America, long before farming ever arrived. So why dogs? Why did our ancestors form this incredible bond with wolves, a powerful predator? There are a few ideas. One is the mutual scavenger model, where less fearful wolves started hanging around human camps, eating scraps. Over generations, the boldest and friendliest wolves survived best in this new environment, essentially taming themselves. Another idea is the pup napping hypothesis, where hunters would take wolf pups from their dens and raise them. These hand-raised wolves would be loyal to the human group and could be used as living tools for hunting or as guards. A third idea, the alloparental care model, suggests that humans have a natural instinct to care for the young, and this instinct was simply extended to the cute and charismatic wolf pups. Whatever the exact reason, once that bridge was crossed, the partnership was a massive success. Dogs helped humans hunt. They acted as an alarm system against predators. They provided warmth on cold nights, and as the evidence from von Oberkassel shows, they provided deep emotional companionship. They are the first and most enduring pets in the entire archaeological record. And now for our number one most shocking prehistoric pet. An animal so unexpected it rewrites the rules of domestication. Number 1. Foxes. When we think of canids that became our friends, we only think of the wolf that became the dog. The idea of a pet fox seems like something from a fairy tale, but the archaeological evidence is clear and stunning. Humans have tried to tame foxes, and in some cases, they succeeded in forming a powerful bond. The most incredible evidence comes from a cemetery in Jordan called Uyun al-Hammam. This site is about 17,000 years old, which is thousands of years before the first definite dog burial in the region. In one grave, a human was buried, and right next to them, archaeologists found the complete articulated skeleton of a red fox. Articulated means the bones were all in the right place, showing it was buried whole, not eaten and discarded. But the story gets even stranger. After the initial burial, the grave was carefully reopened. The human's body was moved, and the fox's body was taken out, and then placed back in the grave next to the human in their new position, before the grave was sealed up again. This complex, multi-step burial ritual shows an incredible level of respect and care for the fox. It was being treated in the same way as a beloved human family member. If the fox was just food or a source of fur, its bones would have been scattered and butchered. Instead, it was honored. This proves that for these ancient people, the fox was a companion, and this was not a one-time event. On the other side of the world, in Patagonia, South America, a similar story unfolded, though much more recently. In a grave that was 1,500 years old, a man was buried with a type of fox that is now extinct. Scientists analyzed the fox's bones using isotope analysis, and they discovered that its diet was almost identical to the diet of the humans in the village. It was not eating wild animals, it was eating the same food as the people, likely scraps from the family table. It lived its life inside the human community as a pet, right up until it was buried with its owner. Two different continents, separated by thousands of years, but the same emotional story, humans and foxes, living and dying together. There are even more hints. At a site in Russia called Baiki 1, archaeologists found the skulls of Arctic foxes from the Upper Paleolithic period. These skulls showed small but significant changes. They had slightly shorter snouts and other features that made them look more juvenile, a process called neotenization. These are the exact same kinds of changes that appeared in the famous Soviet silver fox experiment, where scientists in the 20th century were able to breed tame foxes in just a few generations. While the sample size from the Russian site is small, it suggests that even way back in the Ice Age, the process of taming foxes may have already been starting to change their physical bodies. So why foxes? Unlike wolves, which are social pack animals, foxes are more solitary. This likely made them harder to fully domesticate on a large scale. But for small, mobile groups of hunter-gatherers, a fox makes a lot of sense. They are small, so they do not eat too much. They are natural pest controllers, keeping snakes and rodents away from the camp. They provide a source of fur, and they are intelligent and playful. Their wide range of vocalizations could have even served as a natural alarm system. The evidence from the burials proves that for some of our ancestors, these tiny canids were more than just useful. They were cherished members of the family. So we have seen the surprising animals our ancestors did keep. But what about the ones they did not? Pop culture is filled with images of cavemen, riding dinosaurs, or keeping saber-toothed cats as pets. Let's bust some of those myths. First, velociraptors. This is pure Hollywood fantasy. Non-avian dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years before modern humans ever walked the Earth. Our ancestors faced mammoths and woolly rhinos, not raptors. What about saber-toothed cats? These fearsome predators were real, but there is absolutely no evidence of them being pets. In most parts of the world, they were extinct before humans arrived or had large populations. We have never found a joint burial of a human and a saber-toothed cat. The relationship was likely one of fear and avoidance, not friendship. And mammoths? People admired them. They painted them on cave walls and carved their likeness from their ivory tusks. They certainly hunted them for their meat and bones, but they never kept them as pets. A baby mammoth would have been impossible for a hunter-gatherer group to feed and control. The same goes for other large carnivores like bears and hyenas. At some cave sites in Spain, we find evidence of humans and hyenas using the same caves, but not at the same time. The evidence is of conflict, including human bones that have been gnawed on by hyenas. It was a relationship of competition, not companionship. And while some more recent cultures, like the Ainu people of Japan, did raise bear cubs for rituals, this is a very different practice from pet keeping, and there is no evidence of it in the Ice Age. The bones of bears we find from that time show clear butchery marks. They were food and a source of raw materials, not friends. The lesson here is simple. Pet keeping works best when a species' size, diet, and social behavior fit with human life. Wolves could be downsized into dogs. Foxes could be tamed. But a bear or a hyena was just too big, too hungry, and too dangerous to ever make the leap from wild beast to fireside companion. So why did they do it? Why would people living a hard life on the edge of survival invest so much time, food, and emotion into animals? The evidence points to a few powerful reasons. First was functional synergy. This means working together made life better for both humans and animals. Dogs helped with hunting and security. Foxes controlled pests. Ravens acted as lookouts. These were not just emotional choices, they were smart, strategic partnerships. Second was symbolic capital. Keeping a rare or powerful animal could be a sign of a person's special status or spiritual power. Think of the shamaness buried in Israel, at a site called Hilazon Taktit. She was buried around 12,000 years ago with an incredible collection of animal parts. 50 tortoise shells, the wing of an eagle, the pelvis of a leopard, and the jaw of a wolf. These animals were not pets in the way a dog was, but they were a curated menagerie, a collection that showed her unique connection to the animal world. Keeping special animals was a way to build social and spiritual authority. Third, and perhaps most importantly, was emotional affiliation. The same chemical bonds that make us love our pets today were at work in the Ice Age. The feedback loop of oxytocin, the love hormone that happens when we look at and touch our dogs, works across species. It is a deep biological impulse. The need for companionship, for a non-judgmental friend, is not a modern invention. The people who nursed that sick puppy at Bonover Castle were not doing it for purely practical reasons. They were doing it out of love. Finally, there was cognitive play. Interacting with an intelligent animal, teaching it, learning its behaviors, and even just watching it sharpens the mind. It hones social intelligence, the ability to understand and predict the behavior of another being. In the complex social world of hunter-gatherers, this was a highly valuable skill. Ice Age pets were not a luxury. They were woven into the social, economic, and spiritual fabric of life. The story of our ancient animal companions is a story that is still being written. New technologies are allowing us to see the past in more detail than ever before. Ancient proteomics can identify what species a tiny bone fragment belongs to, helping us tell the difference between a young dog and a fox. Paleometagenomics can analyze the tartar on an ancient animal's teeth to see exactly what it ate, proving if it was sharing human food. New laser techniques can analyze a single whisker or feather to track an animal's diet as season by season, and powerful computer models using machine learning can scan digital images of bones to find the subtle signs of domestication that we might have missed with the naked eye. The list of prehistoric pets is only going to grow in the coming years. So the old image of the brutish, lonely caveman is dead. The reality is a world filled with vibrant, complex relationships between our ancestors and a surprising variety of animals. They shared their fires, their food, and even their graves with dogs, foxes, cats, and birds. This was not just about practicality, it was about recognizing another living being as part of your social world. This ability, this emotional and cognitive leap, is one of the things that makes us human. That ancient legacy of love and friendship is still with us, curled up at our feet today.